Welcome to Empowering You with Cynthia Fontaine, where your transformation begins. This isn't just a show, it's your invitation to unlock personal power and trust your inner wisdom. Each episode, I'll guide you to release what holds you back and reconnect with the truth already inside you. Because when you align with your intuition, everything changes. You didn't find this by accident. You're ready. Let's begin.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Empowering You with me, Cynthia Fontaine. I'm so glad that you found me. And if this is your first time seeing this show, I'm doubly glad that you found me because you were meant to be here. And for my viewers who watch month after month and episode after episode, thank you for your support and your loyalty and following me. And please share this with your friends. You know, we're on YouTube as well as on the Rhode Island station. So please share it with your friends, because the more our shows get out, the more it helps people in the world. And you know, I just want to start this way because some people maybe don't watch the credits at the end. And so know that there are a lot of great shows here on the station and also available on YouTube. So if you're out of the local Rhode Island area, you can see these shows all on the YouTube channel, which you will see in the show on the bottom. I forget what they call that, like ticker tape. You'll see that, the information for the show and everything, as well as my email there. So I wanted to start with that. And so welcome. I think this is show, I don't know, 15 or 16 or 17, something like that. And I'm excited to be here. And at the same time, I do want to acknowledge the time that we're in. And if you see this show 6 months after recording or a year after recording, then it will be history. And hopefully by this time, the new story that we're writing is going to be a more positive, kind story than the story that we are in now. Because life really is, in a way, about story, and the story that we're telling and the story that we're writing. History is the story of what has been. And I wanted to share that I was very intentional in my outfit today. Normally I would not wear a t-shirt, if I was on the podcast or on TV, the TV show with you here. But I picked this particularly because for me, in a lot of ways, we're in mourning. Many of us in this country and around the world are in a state of sadness and in grief and mourning. And the black represents that. And yet the crystals of the smiley face, the happy face, represent hope and happiness and joy. And so I picked this intentionally for that reason. And the show's going to be a little bit different today. I'm going to go in a little bit to history, and you'll see how it ties in. So stay to the end. And of course, we'll do a little meditation and always pull a card. So let's just get grounded as we start. I'm just going to give the crystal ball a little tap. Take a breath in and feel a peace just come over your whole body. And you could do this if you're sitting or standing. You can even do it if you're in the car. Just don't close your eyes. And just take a breath in and center yourself and release all the stress and all the chaos that's going on. Now, I'm an empath, so I feel things. When I work with clients, I feel their emotions. And of course, being a psychic, I can tap into even a deeper level and have a deeper level of understanding when I work with people. And so I have found myself this week particularly extremely tired, and you may be finding that as well. And because the earth itself, Mother Earth, is showing us that we are in chaos. We're seeing volcanoes and floods and all sorts of things going on. earth, nature-wise. So nature is showing us how upset the world is because the globe, the earth, reflects ourselves, right? And we've not been good stewards of the earth. We were really on a good path and a good trajectory, and we were really looking at the environment as a whole and being more environmentally conscious on many levels. And sadly, many of those environmental levels that we have reached are now being turned backwards. And, you know, in this country, we're seeing a lot of things rolled backwards. And it's unfortunate and it's sad. And yet, this is a time that has been predicted and prophesized by every culture around the globe. And when you look at astrology, the astrology supports where we're at. Now, it's going to get a little more chaotic than what we're seeing now, even though things are pretty rough. So expect that. Next year, astrologically wise, things do start smoothing out a little bit. But how do you work with what's going on right now, this year, and in this moment? First is feel your grief, feel your sadness, because the way of life in the United States here, as we've known it, is changing right before our eyes. Some people are celebrating it, but the majority of people are not. And we have to look back in history to see how we got to where we're at. And I've always been interested in history and as a point of reference to see how we got where we are. And for me, I looked back as far as equal rights and women's rights and equanimity. And you know, I've known this for a long time, some of these facts, but some I was surprised by. And so I went back to Constantine the Great, because that was when Constantine brought together all the religions that were all over the place in the Roman Empire and brought them together sort of under this one umbrella. Well, Constantine also changed the laws significantly for women. Now, it did start before Constantine. When we go back to 3300 BC, that's when the age of patriarchy began. Before that, it was the age of the goddess. And this is an interesting thing that you may not know, but before 3300 BC, God was called she, and it was the divine feminine, and the women who were the ones that were the leaders, and there was peace. There was not a weapon of war before 3300 BC. And when things shifted in the age of the patriarch started taking root, that's when weapons started being made. And then moving forward, that really took hold in 2500 BC. And then we moved to Constantine, which was in the early 300s after Christ, which is AC, AD. I don't know, they changed the initials. So this was, now we're in the new era. And then, so Constantine, before Constantine, women had the right to get divorced. Women also had the right not to marry. Women had the right to own businesses, to own property on their own, to run an estate, farming, and etc. And so women had a lot of freedoms that my generation has also experienced, but we are the first generation as adults since the time of Constantine who have been able to experience and live this way. You know, before 1974, a woman could not get a credit card or a bank account in her name without her husband's signature. How about that? So when I was 10 years old, I'm aging myself now, my mother was first able to finally get a credit card in her name. She couldn't get a mortgage. She couldn't get a bank account. She had to have the signature of her husband in order just to do banking here in the United States. And in some states in the country right now, you may be aware and you may not be, depending on, how sort of open you are to looking at alternative media, because we're not seeing a lot of this information on mainstream media. So you really have to go looking for it. And I encourage you to do that because there's a lot of information and things that are going on behind the scenes, behind mainstream media, that we're not seeing, that's going to affect every single one of us. And much of it is not in a positive way, especially for women. And so, guys, I don't want you to feel like I'm leaving you out here, because without you, we wouldn't be here. And without us, nobody would be here either. I'm not leaving you out. And for all the men out there and the people who identify as males, thank you when you support women, when you encourage us, when you know that we can do great and we can make things better. And for the women who do that with your men too, yes, because we need that. We both need that. And we need equality and equanimity and kindness and compassion to move forward in a way where the wars will stop and we'll have peace. That's the only way that we can move forward in this. It cannot be one of where one controls the other. It has to be a way that we come together, and it can be done, and it has been done in the past. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a lot of hard work, right? And again, when we look to history and see how we got to where we're at, and you understand that this was not always the way, right? That there was a time when women had so much personal freedom. And, even when we look at the country of Iran, in 1970s, the women of Iran were wearing miniskirts and go-go boots, just like we were here. And then their leadership changed, and now they are where they're at, okay? So they too had the freedoms much like we had here in the United States. So back to some of the states in the U.S., some states, Texas, for example, are trying to pass laws so that women, again, will not be able to get a bank account, get a mortgage, open a checking account without the signature of their husband. And if they're not married, they'll need a brother's signature, a father's signature, or an uncle's signature. And if you're following some of the things that are going on in Congress, there is one item that they've been trying to get through now called the SAVE Act. And it's actually right now currently going to be bundled with passing of more money for ICE. And this isn't for either side. I'm not saying I support it, I don't support it, whatever. If you know me, you know where I'm at. But just so you're aware, there's a reconciliation bill that is coming to the Senate that will not need the vote. It can pass just with one side of the aisle's vote to give ICE more money. But now what they're doing is they are adding the SAVE Act to that ICE ballot, that ICE vote, to get this passed. What the SAVE Act does, I'm going to explain it quickly because you may already know. If you follow me, most likely you do. The SAVE Act disenfranchises almost 70 million women in this country to vote. So basically, it's a poll tax. And you can see how we're starting to roll backwards. So our mothers, our grandmothers, their grandmothers fought for us to get to the place where we had a voice, where we had freedoms, where we had a place in the world that we were valued. And though not equal, but we had made a lot of progress. One of my dear friends who's long passed, she lived into her 90s, Her name was Margaret. She was an artist. She was a suffragette. And I had beautiful conversations with her. And, so it's dear to my heart to have had that relationship. And that got me sort of inspired when I was maybe in my 20s or 30s, having that relationship and starting to understand the difficult things that we had to go through to get to the point where we are. But it didn't have to be this way, because it wasn't this way before Constantine the Great. So this is a call out to the women out there, the women in the United States and around the globe. This is a call out to the men who celebrate women, who understand that we have so much value. This is a call out for you to get solid in who you are. Understand more about yourself so that you can bring your incredible, beautiful self out to the world. Now, I've talked about in previous shows archetypes and spirit guides, and this is all tying into that, right? So I have a hero archetype, and that was a hard archetype for me to really own. And the reason why it was brought to my attention when I was in healer school, one of the teachers found out that I had I had witnessed a terrible accident, and I saved one of the people that were in the accident, basically. And she asked me, was that the first time that you've ever been in that position? And I said, well, no, because my sister, when she was young, choked on a chicken bone, and I had to do the Heimlich and save her. And then, interestingly enough, while in healer school, our graduation weekend, I'm sitting next to one of my classmates, and she choked on a chicken nugget, and I did the Heimlich and saved her from choking. And so she really encouraged me to look at that hero archetype, and if I could own it. And at first I wasn't comfortable with it, and I thought, so I had to explore, what did that mean? And what I discovered was I can own it, but it doesn't mean that I have to wear a cape and I'm out rescuing people who are, I don't have to step in front of somebody who's, in a bad situation, although I probably would. But for me, what a hero means really is knowing who I am and taking that and bringing that out to the world to help people wherever I can. And for the last year, I have to be honest, I have found myself in a place, partially because I was involved in a car accident last July, and I'm still recovering. I'm still in physical therapy. It's been a very long process. And so coupled with that, coupled with everything that's going on in the United States and in the world, and me having a finger on, what's going on in the minute, for a wide range of things, from our national lands being sold off to mining, and native treaties being broken, and climate rollbacks happening, and money being taken away from kids who are hungry, and it goes on and on and on, as you well know. And now we are sending boots on the ground to Iran. It's a somber moment where we're at. And it's really taken me this whole last year to sit, to contemplate, to get re-engaged with myself and who I am. And I sort of went into hiding a little bit, to be honest. And an interesting thing, my dear friend Jeannie Bundy, who has a show on the channel, she took me to a story event just this week. And one of our friends was presenting. She was going to tell a story. I'd never been to an event like this before. And after the three women did their story, they told a story about themselves. the person who facilitates it said, okay, I want 3 volunteers. Nobody raised their hand. And then she's like, oh, nobody raised their hand at once. And she said, we're going to play a little game. Now, none of us knew what it was. And so our friend's daughter raised her hand, our friend that did one of the talks. She raised her hand, still nobody else. So, of course, I raised my hand. And then she asked a fellow in the audience to come up, and he agreed. So she had a little bag, and she picked a little thing with a word on it. And the word was money. And she asked us to do a 1-minute talk about money. And luckily, I didn't have to go first because that's always the most difficult position. I went last. And so it gave me a couple of minutes to think about what could I say about that. And it's interesting because money's been a part of my story for my whole life. And I'm not going to make a big thing about this because that's a whole nother subject. And I'm actually met somebody at the event who I'm going to have on the show who teaches young adults and kids getting ready to go to college and firefighters going to the academy financial literacy. So I'm excited about that. But what that 1-minute talk did for me, because of course there's no notes, you can't think about it. And I don't know if you watched the last show that I put out here, or if you noticed that I was kind of following notes because I had a whiteboard. And I, somewhere along the way, I've been shaken about everything that's going on. But that 1-minute talk, that 1-minute opportunity really re-engaged me and made me realize, oh my God, I've been studying and doing this work for so long that you can ask me a question and chances are I can rattle it off. And so this week I decided, no notes. I don't need them, right? I'm coming to you from my heart, and I hope that you can feel that. I really do hope that you can feel that. And in my heart lives those archetypes. Well, they live in the chakras because we have 12 of them, remember, if you've seen the other shows. And if you haven't, go watch them and learn about chakras if that's something you're interested in. 7 physical chakras, 5 spiritual chakras, centers. And so the hero lives within me. I also have a poor me. Well, we all have a poor me that lives within us. I have Matilda, the servant girl. Before I understood Matilda, she was a slave to my family, a slave to those that I worked with, a slave to my job, and I had to learn to understand her. And once she came out of the shadow, because we're in a shadow period now, and came into the light, she became a servant, which is very different from a slave. Now, back to astrologically quick, because we're almost out of time. This time has been prophesized, not just astrologically, but in every culture around the globe for decades and decades and decades and generations. Even Leonardo da Vinci, Notre Dame, every native culture you find, they've all talked about it. And they also talk about that we'll get through this and it will be better on the other side. But the only way that can happen is with you and I and others holding hands and making it happen, not in a forceful way. Right now, there are Palestine and Israeli women walking barefoot for peace in the Middle East, together, hand in hand. And that's what we need to do. So this is a call out to the women out there, not just the women, but women who identify as women, people who love women, and you men too. This is a call out to you to get really clear about who you are, what makes you tick, but even more than that, I want you to look at your money. How do you make money? Is it clean or is it hurting people? How do you spend your money? Are you spending it with companies that are hurting people or helping people? I encourage you this year, because we're just coming into spring, grow food. Get to know your farmer's market. get to know your neighbors, have an exchange of some kind if you're able to. Those are the small things that are going to help. And we're going to talk more about that. But we've only got 3 minutes left. I'm going to pull a card for you really quickly because, you know, I love to do that. Let's see what Spirit wants you to know, leave with until you see me next time. So let's see. This one, no, that one doesn't feel right. This one feels right. Oh, TikTok in protection. So this is letting you know that we've got time, that this isn't the end of the world. We've got time to right this ship. But it's going to take all of us to do that. It's going to take all of us to put down our differences, to lay down the weapons, to lay down the swords, and come together and to a place where we meet in the middle. So it may be for you, maybe you're going to bake cookies for a neighbor or for friends or whatever. Maybe you're going to have have coffee with somebody who you differ with and have a conversation, right? About why do you feel that way? I just did this with my stepmother, who I've been at odds with our whole entire relationship together. And she's been around since I was 16 years old. And so it's been a few decades. And for the first time ever, we had to talk beyond what our differences are and why. I wanted to know how she got to the place where she is and why she feels that way. And for the first time in almost 40 years, she really cracked open. She had this incredibly tender moment. And when we can get beyond the surface stuff and get to the hearts, we all want the same things. We want, if you have children or grandchildren, you want them to be safe. Or if you have loved ones, brother, sister, mother, father, uncle, best friends, spouses, we want them to be happy. We want them to be safe. We want everyone to be well fed and have a roof over their heads. But we cannot do that unless we do it together. The saying, it takes a village. It does take a village. But when we do things in a more equitable way, then we can create this. Things have gotten too far apart. The gap has gotten too wide, whether it's politics or whether it's finances, where since Reaganomics, you know, we've created more billionaires in the United States than any other time period in history. And so we have to come back to a place of centering. So thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you for watching the show and being part of this. And I'd love to hear from you. So the email will be on the screen. Please email me. And if there's a topic that you'd like me to talk about, email and let me know. And also, I'm lining up some new guests for the show. If you have something that you think would be valuable and you'd like to come on the show, email that too. And I or one of my team members will get back to you. So I want to thank the crew. I want to thank my my director and my studio manager so much for all the help that you give. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.